No one was supposed to know about it. Not before Barcelona. But something leaked, and now, everything is spiraling. According to several insiders, Mercedes may have engineered a power unit solution. So advanced, and so legally questionable, that the FIA had no choice but to call an emergency meeting just days before the 2026 tests. If this trick is confirmed, it could deliver up to 0.4 seconds per lap. And right now, rival teams are demanding clarification. Because the system is not strictly illegal, but it isn't clean either. The problem? It hinges on a loophole the FIA never expected anyone to exploit. But what's more explosive is that this isn't the only gray zone Mercedes is operating in. And behind closed doors, some believe this is just the beginning of something far more dangerous. On the surface, nothing is official. No rule has been broken, not yet. But the FIA's decision to summon every team to an emergency meeting, just days before pre-season testing, says more than any press release ever could. At the heart of this controversy is a system developed by Mercedes. A system some insiders are now calling the dynamic compression bypass. It's not visible in static checks. It doesn't violate the written rules. But when the power unit heats up under race conditions, everything changes. Multiple teams, including Red Bull, Ferrari, and Aston Martin, have now filed formal requests for technical clarification. Not accusations. Not protests. But pressure. Strategic pressure, to force the FIA to define whether this technology violates the spirit of the 2026 engine regulations. Because that's the key. This isn't about whether Mercedes crossed a line. It's about whether the line was ever clearly drawn in the first place. The FIA, under growing pressure, has remained vague. Their only public comment refers to a routine technical alignment discussion, scheduled ahead of Barcelona. But behind that calm phrasing, the stakes are rising fast. Because if the FIA says the system is legal, it forces every other manufacturer to start building their own version, immediately. And if they say it's illegal, they risk being accused of rewriting the rules, at the last second, to stop one team from running away with the season. And that's why the paddock is tense. Not because of what Mercedes built, but because the FIA's next move could shape the entire 2026 championship. Before a single lap is even completed. The system was never supposed to be public. But something, or someone, let it slip. It started with a technical briefing, buried inside supplier documentation from a subcontractor working on intake flow sensors. The document referenced dynamic thermal offset behavior. A phrase that, to the untrained eye, would mean nothing. But to the engineers at Red Bull and Ferrari, it raised a red flag instantly. Because buried inside that language was a clue. A system that alters combustion behavior based on internal heat cycles, essentially creating a second performance map that only activates once the engine reaches a live temperature threshold. From there, the whispers turned into quiet investigations. Ferrari reportedly began cross-checking Mercedes bench data. With dyno simulations from the last shared testing window, they found inconsistencies. Small ones, but consistent. Fuel flow underload was too stable. Exhaust temperatures didn't match baseline combustion expectations. Something was off, and they knew it. Red Bull, meanwhile, had noticed strange output behavior in their own simulations when trying to replicate Mercedes' projected stints. At first, they assumed it was a modeling error. But once the leak surfaced, everything snapped into focus. Now, instead of a clever integration, it looked like a bypass. A system built to remain invisible. Until it wasn't. That's when the pressure on the FIA began. Not because the teams had conclusive proof, but because, for the first time, they had a reason to dig deeper. And Mercedes? They've remained silent. No denials. No explanations. Which, in this paddock, is often more revealing than any official statement. Here's where it gets complicated. Because even with all the suspicion, the data mismatches, the supplier leak, the strange engine behavior, Mercedes may not have broken a single rule. Not directly. The FIA's power unit regulations for 2026 were written to control inputs and outputs. Fuel flow, electric deployment, thermal recovery. But they don't say much about what happens inside the engine once temperatures shift into live race conditions. That's the gap. Mercedes, if they truly built a compression system that adapts post-ignition, didn't break the law. They dodged it. They found the blind spot between cold bench inspection and dynamic engine behavior under heat. No team has done that this explicitly, at least, not since Ferrari in 2019. That year, it was fuel flow manipulation. Ferrari's engine produced sudden power spikes, without triggering sensor violations. No official cheating was confirmed. But the FIA issued a secret agreement, and Ferrari's performance disappeared overnight. This feels eerily familiar. Once again, a top team may have found an advantage. The rulebook didn't predict, and the FIA didn't know how to stop. And that's the true danger. Because if Mercedes has technically obeyed every rule, but built something that goes against the intended performance cap, then we're not just dealing with a technical trick. We're looking at a philosophical crisis. A question of what F1 actually wants. To punish innovation that skirts the edges? Or reward it until the others catch up? And right now, no one, not even the FIA, seems ready to answer that. What's really keeping the FIA up at night isn't whether the trick is illegal. It's whether they can prove anything at all. Because if Mercedes followed the wording of the rules, but built something the FIA never anticipated, then the issue goes beyond legality. It's about control. This isn't just about one system. It's about what happens when a governing body can no longer keep up with the teams it's meant to regulate. Since the 2026 regulations were finalized, the FIA has insisted on one thing: that this new era would be more transparent, more manageable, more fair. But now, before a single race has been run, that illusion is already under threat. If Mercedes' system works and stays legal, then every other team will be forced to respond. That means tearing apart their current engine maps, abandoning thermal safety margins, and rushing to replicate technology they were never meant to chase in the first place. And if they don't, they fall behind by as much as half a second per lap. But the deeper issue is precedent. Because if the FIA allows this now, if they say nothing, they give teams a silent green light to engineer the next trick, and the next, and the next. That's the nightmare scenario. A 2026 season where innovation outpaces regulation. Not by inches, but by miles. Where the FIA isn't setting the tone, but chasing it. And the longer they hesitate, the more power they lose. Not just over this controversy, but over the entire direction of Formula One's future. The meeting in Geneva isn't just symbolic. It's a crossroads. Because if the FIA decides to take action, they have to move now, before the cars hit the track in Barcelona. And that means issuing a technical directive with real consequences. The first scenario? They declare the compression trick legal, for now, but warn that it will be reviewed during the season. That keeps Mercedes safe in the short term, but forces other teams to scramble for their own solution, while working in the dark. The second? A sudden rewrite. A clarification that redefines how dynamic engine behavior is regulated, essentially outlawing the trick overnight. And if that happens, Mercedes will be in trouble. Because this isn't a plug-and-play feature. It's deeply baked into their combustion logic, their energy deployment curves, and their temperature management profiles. If they lose it, they could lose the core performance advantage they've built their entire 2026 concept around. And then there's the third scenario? The one no one wants to talk about. The FIA stalls. They say they're reviewing the data. They ask for more time. They delay the decision until after testing, or worse, until after round one. That would create chaos. Because the other teams won't wait. They'll assume the trick is legal. And they'll begin pushing their own systems past the edge of compliance, into the same gray zone. The result? A full season arms race. Not of speed, but of interpretation. One team pushes the limit. Another rewrites the boundary. The FIA reacts again and again. Always one step behind. That's what's on the table now. Not just a technical ruling, but a decision that could either stabilize the 2026 season, or let it spiral out of control, before a single point has been scored. So now, we wait. Behind closed doors, inside meeting rooms that weren't meant to exist this early in the season, the FIA will have to choose. Confront this, or contain it. If they act quickly, if they issue a directive before the test, they risk rewriting the rules just days before Barcelona. That would trigger backlash from Mercedes, who've spent months, maybe longer, building around this concept. But if they delay, then Barcelona becomes something else entirely. Not a test, not preparation, but the start of a quiet war. Teams will begin hiding systems, faking telemetry, running low-power modes just to pass inspection, while saving the real software for the laps that matter. The paddock will fracture. Every press conference will turn into a chess match. And the fans? They'll be watching a sport where no one is quite sure what's allowed. And no one's willing to say what isn't. Because the real threat isn't the trick itself. It's the uncertainty it creates. And if this becomes the new normal, if every update, every component, every engine mode has to be debated, leaked, and challenged, then 2026 won't be about racing. It'll be about surviving. A regulatory storm that never ends. And the worst part? This might not even be the biggest secret. Because if Mercedes had this system in place for months, You have to ask one thing. What else is already hiding beneath the surface?